Every year, I look forward to going to the Minnesota State Fair, not because I love crowds, but because I love to sketch animals. Before the fair, I select a journal with paper that will suit experiments I want to attempt. This year I selected a 7.5 by 9.5 Strathmore 500 series mixed media soft-covered journal because it's a great size and the paper holds up to all my favorite media. Here I am all set for sketching at the fair. The deep pockets of my Gramichis are filled with a variety of pens and several Niji water brushes, paper towels, and my 3 by 5 inch palette, so there's no reaching into my pack when sketching. I even made a holster to hang from my fanny pack belt. It contains several 15 and 30 millimeter Montana acrylic paint markers, which I used for experiments. To protect my journal from barn dirt, paint accidents, and sweaty fingers, I covered it with a folded slipcover made of 2 sheets of clean newsprint taped tight with decorative masking tape. As you can see in the photos, I used the cover for note-taking throughout the fair. My journal title page lists the dates I attended the fair this year. The 2 dates with an asterisk are the days of the 6th Minnesota State Fair Sketchout. J 2014 means that this journal is Volume J in 2014. My first trip to the fair this year was Friday, August 22nd. Before entering the barns, I scribbled all over a page spread with a yellow Montana marker to create a background for my warm-up sketches. Working on site at the fair means that you have to adapt quickly when high humidity turns your soft-cover book into a floppy, shifting surface, or when your model is in the dimmest corner of a barn. It's what makes this so much fun. And if you start with one pen and it isn't working for you, you need to switch and keep going. Here I isolated a head study for my gesture sketches by laying in flat color with a 15 millimeter Montana acrylic paint marker. On other pages I used markers, after sketching, to create a sense of ground in order to anchor my sketches. In my journals, I'll take notes on color, and I'll also note overheard conversations. The crate for this pigeon was just below eye height. After sketching, I sat on a bench and filled the red in with a 15 millimeter acrylic marker. This is my favorite sketch from this year's fair. Depending on temperature and time of day, the chickens might be very active in the poultry barn. I like to start with gesture drawings. This chicken kept returning to the same pose, so I worked on it in bursts. At the end of each day I've spent at the fair, I write up my impressions. Each year at the fair, I also do a piece of spin art. This year, I scribbled on the spin art paper first with a pink Montana marker before I added paint. This next section is my second visit to the Minnesota State Fair this year, August 23rd. It was a Saturday and the first day of the 2-day sketchout. I begin my day again with gestures to warm up. I experiment with which pen feels most comfortable. Gestures and thumbnail sketches often lead me to do a color study. You need to be alert and go for what captures your attention. I kept returning to this sheep's muzzle shape. For this pigeon, I used my finger to spread the paint and mimic the mottled texture. I leave spaces for photographs that I take during the day, and I make written notes on the page to remind me to place them there. I print them out in the evening. During sketching breaks, I'll write about my impressions. I'll jot down the oddities that catch my eye, like the stuffed dog on the shoulders of a man in a sea of people walking towards me. On this spread, the people sketched at the bottom were what I did at the fair. At home, I added the photo and the write-up that evening. I ended my Saturday sketch section with photos from the 4:30 meeting. And then on Tuesday, August 26th, It was time to return for the final day of the sketch out. Once again, I began with warm-up gesture sketches. Sometimes switching pens gets you even more detail. I really miss having large brushes to cover an area quickly, but I use the Niji water brush in these situations to avoid mess and the likelihood of being bumped and spilling a jar of water. At some point after doing warm-up sketches and a bit of walking, I find a subject to spend time with. If she's taken away to be judged, I still find quick sketches are helpful. Birds are suspicious, but when you observe them calmly, they tend to return to the same position frequently. It's always fun to do gesture sketches of the birds as they stretch. Here I focused on the different combs until turkeys took my interest. These active geese yielded only broad impressions, but the Malay rooster posed with his broad shoulders to me. It's always helpful when you find a sleeping bird or a bird who is about to drift off. Even though I'm there for the animals, I sketch people while waiting for our sketch-out meeting. A couple years ago, my friend Ruth had the gatekeepers stamp her book when she left. Now I try to have these re-entry hand stamps stamped into my journal at the end of each day. Here's the group photo from Tuesday's meeting. The text here is obscured for privacy. After the second State Fair sketch-out day, I only had 3 pages left in my journal, but I had one more visit to the fair coming up. I used a different journal and I scanned some of those images and placed them in a write-up about that day in my main fair journal. My goal for my 4th trip to this year's fair was to create videotapes of me sketching the animals for an upcoming online class. I want to give students a sense of the noise, confusion, and fun to be had sketching in these conditions. On my final trip to the fair this year, I began again with gesture drawings. I wanted to keep using the same paper I'd used in my main fair journal, so I worked in a book that I'd bound with Strathmore 500 series mixed media paper. I warmed up with a Pentel pocket brush pen. Once I had a feel for my subjects, I picked a particularly charismatic rooster. While he wouldn't stand still for me, he did return several times to useful positions so I could keep working. We filmed a 23-minute video of my work with this model. Then it was time to work in a wire-bound journal of fluid 140-pound hot-press watercolor paper. I did this so that I could have loose sheets to frame for an upcoming show. Here I am working on the last sketch of the day using a Faber-Castell Pitt calligraphy pen. My model was a very free-ranging and suspicious turkey. I hope you've enjoyed this flip-through of my 2014 Minnesota State Fair Journal. I hope you'll join us for the 7th Minnesota State Fair Sketch Out on Tuesday, September 1st, 2015.